शान्तिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतः पदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome you all to our Gita classes again. We are on chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, entitled as Transcendental Knowledge. So, till last time we had discussed the first 3 sections of this chapter. We'll just complete the third section today, and then we'll go further. So, last time we had discussed about this whole concept of action and reactions in detail, the karma philosophy. And at that time we had discussed what is karma and we had discussed what is vikarma. And today we'll just quickly run through what is akarma. Last time also we had discussed the concept of akarma to some extent. But essentially, akarma means rendering transcendental devotion service to the Lord. Krishna is known as Bhaktavatsal, which essentially means that he loves his devotees. And naturally, because he loves his devotees, there is a certain special bonding with his devotees. And therefore, you find there are many deities of the Lord which are very clearly for the purpose of giving benedictions to the living entities. You can leave it there. There is one particular deity in Kanchipuram in South India which is known as Varadaraj. Raj means king, Vara means benedictions or boons. So Varadaraj means he is a king of benedictions. So essentially, the Lord constantly keeps telling us that if we are practicing a life based on the concept of akarma, then no matter how we live in this world, no matter for how much years we live in this world, what situation we live in this world, sins will not affect us. In fact, good and bad both will not affect us and they will not accumulate into our lives. So, akarma has to be done at multiple levels. At the level of the mind, so we have to use our mind in serving Krishna. And how do we use our mind in serving Krishna? The mind runs around here and there, and therefore the process of chanting is recommended. So, no matter in what state we are in life, we chant the holy names of the Lord. It is not that chanting has to be done only when we are in trouble. So many times people use mantras, use chanting as a means of dealing with difficulties in life. But chanting has to be done for the pleasure of Krishna, and that is, then the mind becomes, then we use the mind in practicing akarma. We use the body, our senses in practice of akarma when the senses are used in worship of the Lord, in serving the Lord. In the olden times, even the greatest of kings, the most powerful personalities in the world, would also perform akarma by using their senses in serving Krishna. Like traditionally in Jagannath Puri, the Jagannath festival is inaugurated by the king doing brooming in front of the deities. So if you have talents, if you have intelligence, use the intelligence in service of Krishna. And if you have influence, then you use your words in service of Krishna. And if you have wealth, you use the wealth in service of Krishna. And if you don't have any of those things, you have time. Use your time in service of Krishna in some way. So essentially, we discussed three types of actions: prescribed action, which is karma; forbidden action, which is vikarma; and transcendental action, which is akarma. So essentially, we have to live life in such a way that practically everything that we do, we use our body, use our mind, use our senses, use our influence, wealth, time, everything in the service of Krishna. That is the concept of akarma. The last section in this chapter that Krishna is going to discuss now is the section which is known as sacrifice. So, in this section, Krishna is going to talk about different types of sacrifices. So, this section will give us a very different understanding of how akarma has to be practiced. So far we discussed, we are saying that we need to practice akarma. Now, in this section, the question is, at our level, whatever situation of life we are in, how do we do it? Material knowledge, no matter what knowledge it is based on caliber. Depending on your caliber, you either get into medicine, or you get into law, you get into engineering, you get into different, there is something called actuaries, finance, so many branches of material knowledge is there. One's personal life, vices that one has, character which one has nothing to do with this material knowledge. All you need is caliber. There are many students who have absolutely no character but have excellent caliber. In fact, somebody told me that in today's time and age in the colleges, almost every second student is having drugs. So having drugs is no more something extraordinary, Anyone takes drugs. So essentially, many times it is seen that harsh, proud, egoistic people, they tend to become toppers also. They tend to do exceedingly well in their subjects. And people who are pure, they have very good habits, but they don't have enough caliber, they don't do well in the exams. So, caliber is always the benchmark for judging material success, whether you have material knowledge or no. One time, a teacher, she asked the students, name 2 kings who have brought happiness and peace to people's lives. This fellow said, smoking and drinking. 2 kings. So, students who have very high caliber, no matter how many vices they have, they can still do well. But spiritual knowledge is not like that. When it comes to spiritual knowledge, people who have the best calibers, but they have no character, they can't function. They can't understand spiritual knowledge, and they can't have, even if they understand theoretically, they cannot have deep realizations of the spiritual truths. One time, Srila Prabhupada was giving a TV interview. And there was one man interviewing Srila Prabhupada. And this man asked Prabhupada about the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada was giving him this, the concept of how we are not the body, we are spirit, soul. But that guy was not able to understand what Prabhupada was trying to say. So Prabhupada said, I am not the body, I am spirit, soul. So this man said, oh really, you are not the body? Prabhupada said, it's not just about me, even you are not the body. So this man said, no, I am the body. So there was so much confusion what Prabhupada was trying to tell him and what this fellow was trying to understand. Finally Prabhupada said, let me give you an example. He said, just like a car cannot move without a driver, similarly the body cannot move without the soul. This man said, wait a minute, where did the car and driver come from? We were discussing about the body, where did the car come from? Prabhupada is saying, I am giving an example. Just like a car cannot move without a driver, similarly the body cannot move without the soul. This man said, I don't get it. Where did the car come from? Where did the driver come from? Just see, such a basic concept, but this man just didn't have the capacity to understand what Prabhupada is trying to say. Essentially, Duryodhan, Dhritarashtra, they heard the entire Bhagavad Gita when it was spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. But unfortunately, because they didn't have character, they couldn't understand the message. It's not that the message was heard only by Arjuna. The message was heard by many other people other than Arjuna. But because they were lacking character, the message will remain a mystery for ever. And therefore, the reason why people today are not able to understand deep spiritual truths is because people live a very selfish, materialistic life centered around themselves. And naturally, because you live such selfish lives, there is no concept of understanding deeper truths of life. And therefore, what is needed to actually grow in spiritual life is selflessness. In fact, spiritually, you cannot grow if you are too selfish. So one of the qualities one is expected to develop if you are really wanting to become successful in spiritual life is learn to become selfless. Like one of our devotees, it's an amazing story, and it's a true story. This person was a doctor, and his wife also was a doctor. They gave birth to one daughter, extremely normal, absolutely good looking, very intelligent girl. And many years later, almost like 10 years later, they gave birth to another daughter. And this girl, the second girl, was completely mentally weak, completely dependent. So doctors told the parents when they knew that the child is going to be born like this, they had told about the child. But the parents decided to still have the child. And when the child was born, as expected, the child was completely abnormal. Can you imagine the parents raising up this child who is completely like a vegetable only? Now this girl is about 16, 17 years old. Still, she has the mental situation of a small baby. And not just normally mental, but she is violent. They have to put a helmet on her all the time because she bangs her head, she hits herself, extremely violent. So when the older daughter, when she was becoming older slowly, she realized something, and that realization actually helped her all her life. Till a certain age, this older daughter, she was fighting against this fact that she always wanted a sister whom she can play with. So she was expecting a sister whom she can play with. But when the sister was born, she had a very important realization in her life. Can you imagine a 10-year-old child having this realization in her life? The realization she had was that I was always wanting a sister so that I can enjoy her. Now I have a sister whom I cannot enjoy, but I have to serve her. So her realization was that, for me, the sister is sent by Krishna not so that I can enjoy, but so that I can serve the sister all life long. And then this girl, she started looking for ways in which she can make this small girl happy. And she realized one of the things that makes this small girl happy is sounds of birds. So this older daughter, she actually went to some music school to learn sounds of birds. And she learned sounds of so many birds, hundreds of birds, just to make the small girl happy. Can you imagine? Generally, when you are put in a situation like this, most of the times you're just frustrated. You're always blaming God, you're always blaming destiny, what is happening to us. But a person who is selfless, he goes beyond himself. Beginning of spiritual life is we live life for ourselves. But when we go a little broader, we tend to live for the family. And you extend it a little more broader, you tend to live for your friends. And then you extend it a little more broader, you tend to live for the community. And then for the world. And then for the superior living entities, like the demigods. And then for the Supreme Lord. Life for oneself is the easiest life. And therefore, higher than life for oneself is life for the family. Because there is some duty. But living life for others, for friends, is even more tougher. But community is much more complex, much more difficult. Of course, it may be easy outside of India. But within the country, when everybody is an Indian, to identify with the community is more tougher. And identify with the world is even more tougher. And then, identifying with the demigods. Most people, when they approach the demigods, they are all going for taking from them. But what can we do for them? And then, highest is the Supreme Lord. For most people, he is completely outside the list. He doesn't even feature in the list at all. Why do I need to serve him? And therefore, Krishna, in this section of the Gita, speaks about sacrifices. And in Sanskrit, the word for sacrifice is yajna. As soon as we hear the word yajna, what comes into our mind? The first thing that comes in our mind is some priest sitting in front of Yajna Kund, chanting mantras and offering ghee into the fire. Most people, when they hear about such a sacrifice, yajna, first of all, they don't understand why put so much ghee into the fire. I mean, there is such a shortage of everything today, and in such an atmosphere, putting ghee into the fire seems to be like a criminal waste. And today, most people don't even understand what these yajna concepts are. So when Krishna is saying, using the word yajna, which means sacrifice, what does he actually mean? Sacrifice essentially means giving up something. In the traditional yajnas, we put ghee into the fire, or Ashwamedha yajna, a horse sacrifice, Gavalambi yajna, different types of sacrifices are there. But if you see from another point of view, bring it a little lower to human level, a mother will sacrifice her sleep, peace of mind, hunger, thirst, health, literally, for the sake of the child. I know one mother just recently gave birth to a child, maybe 2 months back. She was telling me, Prabhuji, before I had the child, I always thought it will be such fun to have a child. But now I realize it's not fun at all. It's completely a sacrifice, because you hardly get to sleep. Child is in jet lag all the time, She sleeps in the night and gets up in the morning. It's a complex cycle, So for the mother, there's a tremendous amount of sacrifice. That's also one type of yajna only. What about, like for example, I was traveling, I had a 9-hour flight. And first of all, these long flights are irritating. If you have a business class seat, that's great. You get to sleep nicely. Regular seats are already compact, tight. There was one mother who had a small baby. And this baby was crying like mad. Almost out of the 9 hours, 8 hours this baby was crying only. And this mother was standing up all the time for 7-8 hours. I was just feeling so bad for her because there was nothing anybody could do to help her. And nobody could help them. They were just crying. Young boys, when they are, in great love with some girl, they're ready to sacrifice their family, they're ready to sacrifice their career, they're ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of marrying this young girl. Like for example, the famous story of the Prince of Nepal. He shot his whole family, mother, father, everybody he shot. And he killed himself also. Why? प्यार के लिए. बड़ा बलिदान दे दिया. खुद का भी बलिदान दे दिया. And then we find that in college going children, school going children, they sacrifice movies for the sake of exams. First day, first show. अगले दिन सुबह एग्जाम है तो क्या करेंगे? सैटरडे सुबह एग्जाम है तो क्या करेंगे? है कि नहीं? मिस करना ही पड़ेगा. First day, first show. So people seem to be doing a lot of sacrifices. Business people sacrifice their sleep, sacrifice their, they eat vada pav on the streets, 3/4 of the times in their life. So are all these also called as yajna? What makes a sacrifice into a yajna? What really makes a sacrifice into a yajna is the motive behind it. So what is the purpose of all these sacrifices that we spoke about? The boy sacrificing everything to get a girl. The purpose is happiness. The mother sacrificing everything for the child. The mother-child relationship is one of the most sweetest relationship. But even in that sacrifice, there is some amount of selfishness involved, some amount of her own pleasure involved, happiness, satisfaction involved. So literally, when there is satisfaction, when there is something that you get in return, that sacrifice is having a motive. And therefore, the highest kind of sacrifice is recommended to Krishna in this section of the Gita. So before he comes to the highest, he speaks about different types of sacrifices. He says the first type of sacrifice is known as Dravyamaya Yajna. What is the meaning of Dravya? The word Dravya means things. Gold, silver, house, car, currency, jewels, money, all that. Dravyamaya Yajna means sacrificing things. I don't mind giving in charity. So the whole concept of giving in charity means Dravyamaya Yajna. There are many people who prefer to do only this. They say, take my money, don't disturb me. Bhag jao. I don't mind giving money, So once in a while, wo Janmashtami, they'll give some donation. And they will say, Baki, pura saal mera paas mat aao. Keep me away. For people like this, doing this yajna is very easy. They work hard, they earn money, they give it in charity. One man, he was sitting in the temple and he just came to visit the temple. So the head of the temple, he came to him and he said that, we need some donation, some money to reconstruct the temple because there's a lot of renovation needs to be done. And we need about 15 lakh rupees. This man, he was quite wealthy. So he said, I'm sorry, I can't give you 15 lakh rupees. I'll give you 50,000 rupees. So as soon as he said that, one plaster fell on his head. So he realized this temple really desperately needs. So he said, no problem, I'll give 1 lakh rupees. So this priest was praying, I wish the whole ceiling falls down. Little by little he is giving. So for some people, sacrificing money is easy. But there is a motive behind that. When people sacrifice money, what they want is name. Like if you go to some temples in Maharashtra, you'll find on every tile somebody's name is written. Literally, मंदिर में एक भी टाइल नहीं है जिसमें किसी का नाम नहीं है. So essentially, when people do Dravyamaya Yajna, what they want is, they want something in return. Name, fame, or something of that sort. If not name, fame, they're looking for some kind of benefit that will come to them by doing something good. Like for example, there was a man in Philadelphia who owned a very small hotel. And one day, late in the night, one very old couple, they came to that hotel. And they said, is there a room in this hotel? This man said, this hotel has only 10 rooms. And all 10 are occupied. But because you all are so old and you all are in desperate need, you can sleep in my room and I'll manage. So they were feeling so bad for this man that he's giving his... So he said, I'm sure you're expecting more money for this room because it's your own room you're sacrificing. He said, no, it's okay. If you have money, you can pay. If you don't have, it's fine. So the old people stayed in that room very gratefully. And the next day, they got up, They were thanking him for making the sacrifice for their sake. And then they told him that a person like you doesn't deserve to own a small hotel like this. You need to be running a 5-star hotel. And this old man told this man that someday I'll build you a 5-star hotel. And he went away. So this man laughed, and naturally, such an old man first of all, and seemed to be living in such a small hotel, so he didn't expect much. 5 years later, he got a return ticket to New York. And he went there, and the particular address where this man welcomed him. So he thought that this fellow was given a ticket just to reciprocate for that one night stay. When he went there, outside this huge hotel on the 5th Street of New York, he walked in and he said, "This hotel belongs to you. I built it for you only." And literally for that one night stay, he offered him a whole 5-star hotel. So sometimes when you give something to others out of kindness, you may get something back which is, much, much more. One time there was a beggar who was begging from house to house. There was one particular house, he would go every day and they would never give him anything. So finally the lady in the house, she was so fed up of this fellow, every day consistently coming to beg. So she took some ashes from the kitchen and threw it on his begging bowl. And this beggar, receiving the ashes, he said, "Thank you very much, I'm very grateful to you." This lady said, "Come on, I've thrown ashes in your bowl, why are you saying thank you?" So he said, "So many days I've been coming, you have never ever given me anything. First day you have decided to give something. So today you have given ash, tomorrow you may give cash. So there is hope from today onwards. So essentially, Dravyamaya Yajna means it's a process of giving. But behind the giving, there is a reason many times, there is an expectation many times. The next type of yajna is known as Tapomaya Yajna. The word Tapomaya means doing tapasya. So that means, what is the sacrifice that one is doing here? One is sacrificing one's demands. The senses demand many things from you. So the mind demands many crazy things from you. So when you say no to the demands of the mind and senses, this is known as Tapomaya Yajna. So the ears are desperate to listen to some music, some particular type of song, and you say, "No, I don't want to hear this." The mind is desperately hankering for some object, and you say, "No, this is not good for me." So essentially, this is tapasya. That means sacrificing the demands of the mind and senses for something else. So now here, when why does one does tapasya? The purpose of doing such tapasya is so that one can enjoy. Like for example, many people do tapasya so that eventually you get to go to the heavenly planets. Many people observe Chaturmas Vrata, and many people observe Jyotirmayi Vrata. Like that, different tapasyas are observed. What is tapasya essentially? It's voluntary inconvenience. So they say that this much time we will take up voluntary inconvenience, and then after that what we will get is a long time enjoyment. That's the mood behind doing tapasya. So different people do different types of tapasyas. Some people eat once a day, some people don't eat grains for 4 months, some people fast for long durations of times. So essentially all this tapasya is so that we control the senses now, so that we can free the senses later. That is the purpose of tapasya essentially. Unfortunately, our tapasya is very weak. How much tapasya we can do? We can't do much. Like in the Ramayana, there is this story of the monkey army. When they started associating with Lord Ram, Lakshman and human beings specifically, they saw that human beings are doing Ekadasi Vrat. So all the monkeys decided, if humans are doing Ekadasi, we should also do Ekadasi. So they also started fasting on Ekadasi day. So many hours they fasted, and then they started feeling hungry, So one monkey got an idea. So one monkey told the other monkeys If you are fasting so badly, tomorrow morning you may not have strength only. So if you don't have strength, how will you climb tree to get the fruits? So another monkey said, we will sit on the tree only, and tomorrow morning when it becomes morning, we will just pluck the fruit and eat. So they went and sat on top of the trees, all monkeys. So one monkey said, tomorrow what if we don't have energy to pluck the fruit? So they said, we'll pluck the fruit and keep it in our hand, we will not eat. So all the monkeys plucked fruit and kept in their hand. Another monkey said, what if we don't have strength to bite only? So one monkey said, let us bite, but we will not swallow. And they bit. And finally they said, that is the end of the Ekadasi. So essentially that's the level of Ekadasi, level of tapasya that we can handle basically. So for us, chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regulative principles, and more than that, cooperating and not fighting with one another, that itself is big tapasya. If you can do this much, you don't have to do anything more than that. And that itself is impossible almost today. The next type of yajna is known as yogamaya yajna. So in yogamaya yajna, Krishna speaks about the process of breathing, controlling the process of breathing. So I'll just read the translation. Just by reading the translation, it is so confusing. So you may understand how practically it is so confusing. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. I mean, it's a complex process, offering the incoming breath into the outgoing and outgoing breath into the incoming. So first of all, when we breathe, we don't even realize how we're breathing. So from the Yoga Sutras, they talk about 10 kind of life airs. There are 10 kind of airs that are circulating in the body. And when there is a proper balance of these 10 kind of airs, the soul remains steady, and there's health in the body, and overall there is longevity, balance of the airs. So this is called the presence of the process of pranayama. So what is essentially pranayama, or what is essentially these breathing techniques? The whole process of breathing techniques is by controlling the life airs, you actually begin to control a lot of elements in nature also. So initially it begins with controlling breath only, controlling incoming breath, outgoing breath. But by just doing this simple thing of controlling the incoming and outgoing breaths, the yogis eventually develop such powers that they can actually control the elements of the world. And therefore, they can levitate, because the body becomes so light that they can just, in their seat, sitting in one place, they don't need a cushion, they don't need anything, just floating in the air. There are yogis that can walk on water, they can live underwater for ages together. So essentially, what these yogis achieve by performing a yogamaya yajna is control, a lot of control. There are people who come to the Kumbh Melas, like right now Ujjain there is a Kumbh Mela going on. And if you go to these Kumbh Melas, there are people who seem to have just appeared from nowhere. They just come out from water. Wherever the Kumbh Mela is, they appear from there, from the water. So they travel through the medium of water. They sit in the Alaknanda river in the Himalayas and they come out in Ujjain. So now if you look at these yogis, tremendous amount of power, unheard of. You can't even understand where these powers come from. There's a lot of power to control matter. There's something known as Prapti Siddhi. Prapti Siddhi means, if I sit over here, I close my eyes, I can acquire something from another place. If I decide that I want to acquire grapes from Nasik, I close my eyes, grapes will come. Some of our devotees sometimes go all the way to Nasik to eat grapes. Weird, Why? Because you don't have Prapti Siddhi. Of course, unless you have a transport system, somebody puts a box into the bus and then you receive it over here. That's the closest we have to Prapti Siddhi. But Prapti Siddhi is a powerful Siddhi. Like in Badrinath, when you go towards Badrinath, on the right on top in Badrinath every day there is a small flame burning. And many of the local villagers in that place, they say that there is one Baba over there called Barfani Baba. So this Baba, he comes down, to the Badrinath area when everybody leaves. That means when it is so cold that no human can stay there, that time he comes down. And that's the kind of, and people say that he's lived for 800 years. Extremely powerful personalities. If you have read the Journey Home, there is mention of this one yogi who lived in the Himalayas with his teacher, and he had such powers that he would crush a bulb, and the powder of that bulb, he would eat it, and then he would drink a glass of Ganga water, and then he would put a thick iron rod on his eyes, and put the other side of the rod on the wall, and walk towards the wall, and the iron rod would bend down. So can you imagine what kind of powers these people had? So this, this yogi, he was asked that if you had such powers and you're so perfect in yoga, why did your master kick you out from his Gurukul? And this man said, the reason my master kicked me out is because I was too much enamored by these powers. And I want to show these powers to the world. And therefore my Guru told me, if you want to show these powers to the world, you can't stay with me. Get lost from here. And he said, I don't know anything else. The only thing I know now is do all these tricks. And I earn money by doing all these tricks. So essentially, when there is the process of breathing practice done, and when there is enough control over your inner airs, you get the power to control external elements. But what is the purpose of this yajna? The purpose of this yajna is power, influence, control. That means you are not doing this as a sacrifice without any motive. There is a hidden motive behind it. Then there is another type of yajna which is known as Swadhyaya yajna. Swadhyaya yajna is also known as Jnana yajna. So in this, Swadhyaya means study of the various scriptures. So here, people are driven by the thirst for knowledge. So here, what do they sacrifice? They sacrifice the designations, they give up everything, and they become impersonal Mayavadis. So essentially, the purpose of this yajna is they give up their jobs, they give up their designations, they just go to the forest and read Vedic scriptures, literatures, they sacrifice their time. But the purpose of these people, why they do this, is because they want to reach the Brahmajyoti, merge into the impersonal light. So essentially, what they are looking for is Shanti or peace. Sometimes when you are frustrated with the world, you sometimes feel, I want to go to the forest and read a novel. That's the forwarded reflection of this. There are people who are completely fed up of things in this world. They just want to go to the forest and completely absorb themselves in Vedic scriptures. So here, the sacrifice seems to be that they are sacrificing their comforts. But what they are actually ending up doing is that they are looking for peace. So here, they may essentially be externally sacrificing designation, sacrificing their comfortable living. They go to the forest, living and reading scriptures. But again, this is not motivation without any motive. The motive here is, I want Shanti, I want peace. And then Krishna speaks about another type of yajna, which is known as Bhakti-mani yajna. So in Bhakti-mani yajna, the whole process of Bhakti-mani yajna is to please the Lord, satisfy the Lord. So in all the first four types of yajnas that we discussed just now, the purpose or the motive is to satisfy oneself. But here, in this one, Bhakti-mani yajna, the motive is to satisfy the Lord. When one does Bhakti-mani yajna, one actually does all the other types of yoga also. Naturally one does Dravya yoga because automatically what one has, a devotee wants to share it to Krishna, offer it to Krishna. Naturally you do Tapama yoga also because you restrain the demands of the mind and senses not to show that you are powerful, not to show that I have sense control, but for the pleasure of Krishna. Because Krishna will not like it, therefore I don't do it. Why do I observe Ekadasi? I don't observe Ekadasi to show the world just see how much sense control I am. I observe Ekadasi because by observing Ekadasi I am pleasing the Lord. And therefore, when one does Bhakti Yoga, one automatically does Yoga Yoga because we do Sankirtan Yoga. The process of performing Kirtan is also the greatest type of yoga. And then by doing Bhakti Yoga, we are automatically doing Swadhyaya Yoga because we reading Prabhupada's books, we reading translated literature. And therefore, when one does Bhakti Yoga, one does all the yogas. And the advantage of doing Bhakti Yoga is that there is no motive behind it at all. There is no selfish cause behind it at all. And therefore, as I said, Yajna means sacrifice. Sacrifice means there should be any personal motive. If there is a personal motive in sacrifice, the sacrifice is not sacrifice at all. The only motive behind sacrifice has to be to please Krishna. And without the ultimate goal of pleasing Krishna, all the sacrifices don't make any sense at all. And then Krishna explains two types of sacrifices. The first type of sacrifices, he says, is sacrifice for brahmacharis. He says some brahmacharis sacrifice the hearing process and senses in the fire of mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice objects of senses in the fire of senses. So what essentially it means in essence? For the brahmachari, the sacrifice that is recommended is sacrifice his mind in the hearing process. That means, just like ghee is poured in fire, a brahmachari sacrifices his mind in the fire of hearing. So constantly, the role of a person who is living in the Nama's order is to hear from the Guru. As much as possible, focus on the hearing process. And such a person doesn't want to hear anything else. He doesn't want to hear criticism, he doesn't want to hear worldly things, he doesn't want to hear gossip, he doesn't want to discuss all other mundane things, but he wants to focus on hearing from the spiritual master about spiritual things. So similarly, for a grihastha, what is recommended is that the grihastha cannot do what the brahmachari does. The grihastha cannot leave everything and sit and hear from the Guru. Not possible. If I come and decide that I want to hear Rukmani going on in temple, Bhagavad class. So why does he say, I will tell you my grandson's Vivaha, you come over here. So many problems going on over here, you have one more Vivaha to hear. So there is so many complications at home, where is the time to go and hear about God so much? Very difficult to invest time constantly on hearing about God. So what is the sacrifice that is recommended for a grihastha? So, just like the brahmachari's job is sacrificing the mind and the hearing process, similarly, the role of a grihastha is to try avoiding sense gratification. That means, the role of a grihastha, so in grihastha, there is tremendous opportunity for sense enjoyment. Like for example, if a brahmachari sits and he thinks, I want to drink rose milk. Where will he get rose milk from? Absolutely no possibility of getting rose milk at all. But with the rest of things, I want to get a pizza today. He just has to make one call. 10 minutes is the pizza on the door, right? So essentially, there is gratification, but for a grihastha, there has to be investment in sense control. That means that though there is gratification, the yajna that is recommended for a grihastha is restrained. And which is the practice that grihastha has to do. For a brahmachari, it is very easy to restrain because there is no choice only. So what is difficult for a brahmachari is to invest the mind in hearing. What is difficult for a grihastha is to invest energy in restraining the senses when it is easily possible to let it go. So all these sacrifices, these yagyas that we are speaking about, every yagya has an advantage. Whenever we perform yagya, means for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, there is an advantage. The first advantage of performing yagya is there is sense control. Whether you are a brahmachari or a grahastha, whether you are practicing tapomaya yagya, dravyamaya yagya, yogamaya yagya, swadhyayamaya yagya, bhaktimaya yagya, the whole idea is there has to be some sacrifice. And for us to sacrifice something, you have to control your senses, you have to control your ego. The second thing is, whenever there is a sacrifice, there is always freedom from misery. So Krishna says that material life is already miserable. And what is the cause of misery in material life? The cause of misery in material life is the tendency to commit sins. So misery comes from sin, and the whole idea is that when we sacrifice voluntarily, we get purified faster. And the third advantage of performing sacrifices is that these sacrifices offer happiness at two levels. While you're on this earth, there is some advantage of doing good. Just like the Dharamaya here, anybody who does charity, the charity comes back to you. Maybe not in this life, maybe in the next life. Yeah. And the second advantage is that after you are dead, the next life in the heavenly planets, that's also extremely good. So you get name, fame, and you get heavenly existence. So anytime a sacrifice is performed, there is always an advantage associated with it. The question now is that, how do I learn to perform sacrifices? How will we learn to understand which sacrifice one should do? Life is already very confusing, and therefore if you have choices, it's always difficult to choose. Should I do Dharamaya yagya? Should I do Bhaktimaya yagya? Which one should I do? And therefore the next verse, Krishna speaks how we should learn to choose what I need to do. And therefore Krishna speaks this very important verse, which is like one of the most important verses of the Gita, which teaches us about the importance of having a guide. Krishna says, Tadviti Panipadena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadeshante Jnanam Jnaninas Tattvadarshina. He says, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So, the self-realized spiritual master is called as Tattvadarshi. Tattvadarshi means truth. Darshi means seeing. Tattvadarshi means the one who has seen the truth himself. That means, for somebody to guide you, he should himself have some vision. In India, typically, if you ask somebody for how to go to one particular destination, anybody on the street will be fully confident to tell you to go straight. You go left. Even though that fellow has never seen that building ever in his life, he will still give you guidance. Everybody wants to be Tattvadarshi. Unfortunately, without knowing Tattva, without having the darshan, they want to be Tattvadarshi. So, bona fide spiritual master is somebody who you should approach and ask that person, which yagya should I do? Which sacrifice should I do? What should I give up? What service should I do? And therefore, to understand the process of yagya, to understand the process of sacrifice, how to give up, when to give up, how much to give up, for what to give up, what needs the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. So in this purport, Prabhupada talks about three words: Pariprashnena, Pranipata, and Sevaya. So these are three words that Prabhupada uses. The word Pranipat means submissive surrender. So what is the meaning of submissive surrender? When we approach a bona fide spiritual master, first thing we should do is humbly tell, I don't know. I don't know, you tell me what I should do. So, after Pranipat, there should be Seva. Seva means service. And service is always meant to please the spiritual master. So, when you do Pranipat, and then you do Seva, when the spiritual master is pleased, then the next thing after you do Seva is Pariprashna. That means ask questions. So most people straight away go to a guru, go to a teacher and ask questions. What should I do? So the order in which one should actually connect with the spiritual master is, first there should be Pranipat, that means one should approach the spiritual master with humility, with the mood that I don't know. And then when you approach the spiritual master with humility, with Pranipat, then you do Seva. You do some service to the spiritual master, please the spiritual master. And when you please the spiritual master, then comes the third thing, which is Sevaya. That means, Pariprashna, which means ask a question. Prabhupada, he talks about two things in the purport. He says, one should not do blind following and absurd inquiries. What is the meaning of blind following? Blind following means that one should not just follow the spiritual master blindly. And the second thing he says, absurd inquiries. Absurd inquiry means inquiries that are totally irrelevant to spiritual life. One time Prabhupada was giving an interview, newspaper interview. And this man, interviewing Prabhupada, he said, what is that mark on your head? Prabhupada asked him, what is that cloth on your neck? This interviewer had tie. What is the meaning of cloth on your neck? This man looked at his tie and he was blank. He never thought about it, This man kept looking at his tie. He didn't know what to answer now. Then Prabhupada told him, when you come in front of a bona fide spiritual master, don't ask him stupid questions. He didn't answer his question, what is the tilak on your head, what is the mark on your head. Prabhupada just said that when you come in front of a bona fide spiritual master, you should know what to ask. So many people, they come in front of a spiritual teacher and they ask all absurd questions. Nothing connected with spiritual life. When I had gone to one country called Malawi. Malawi is a very small country in Central Africa. And when I was there, the devotees over there arranged for a talk in one university, which was for the journalists. And everybody over there was going to become journalists in the future. And they were all, completely disconnected with the Vedic culture. Most of them were, Africans. No idea what Vedic culture was. And I had to speak to such an audience. And I spoke about the basic concepts of spirituality. And I spoke about how spirituality can help us in our lives if we understand how it is unifying in nature and all that. I spoke about the body-soul concept. I spoke about everything basic. I thought I gave a good class, After the class got over, I said, is there any questions? The question answer session went on longer than the class. But not even one question about the class. Nothing about anything I spoke. They all asked me general knowledge questions. They asked me about what is my color of dhoti kurta, why is it this color? Why is that tilak over there? Why do you have a shady at the back, I mean, can you imagine, almost an hour I was answering questions. Totally disconnected from the talk. Totally disconnected to anything that is going to help them in their spiritual lives. Absurd inquiries. This is what it's called. Irrelevant to, progress of spiritual life. So when one comes in front of a bona fide spiritual master, one shouldn't make absurd inquiries. And therefore, a spiritual master is like a doctor. When you go in front of a doctor, you should know how to speak to the doctor. You can't ask the wrong questions to the doctor. And therefore, when we respect the spiritual master as somebody who can actually guide us, we will actually progress in our spiritual lives. So we will stop over here. We will discuss the next time about how the spiritual master guides us to overcome our weaknesses and to focus on our strengths.